If you go to ibm.com/cloudant, CLOUDANT, that's the technology that I work on. IBM has about 450,000 employees worldwide. The section that I'm part of, Cloudant, is part of a group called IBM Analytics, which is responsible for looking after data analysis tooling typically provided within the cloud. We do have a Slack technology deployment, and it's a fairly large one. Within the Slack channel that we have for analytics, there are 4,500 individual channels and 12,000 individual people, all within that one Slack team. Now that can make communication very, very difficult indeed. Why am I mentioning this? If you think about IBM, most people will tend to think of hardware, mainframes, that kind of thing. And it's true, IBM does make mainframes, but in fact the majority of IBM business is now services, as in consulting, and software development. And within the software group, there are three major types of product. You have the old style, and by old style I mean well established and venerable. So technologies like DB2, WebSphere, Customer Information Control System, KICS, that kind of thing. They will tend to use documentation tools and techniques that reflect the nature of the product development process. And so consequently, if you take something like DB2 or KICS, which has a release maybe once every year, maybe once every 2 years, something like that, then they will have a very traditional development and deployment model, and the documentation will reflect that as well. That means that they can make use of traditional documentation type tools, very, very heavy users of DITA. We deploy our DITA as HTML into an online system called Knowledge Center, and you can go there to see the web pages, you can get PDF versions of the content as well. So that's a very traditional, old-style documentation model, as reflects the older established development processes. And then right at the other end of the extreme, we have the newer style development models. And Cloudant, the section that I work for, is a good example of that. Cloudant was actually an acquisition. It was a technology that was built up on top of an open source database, CouchDB. It's a NoSQL database. And what Cloudant does is to basically enterprise enable it. It really puts it into the cloud and lets you do all sorts of things remotely. So IBM acquired Cloudant, and it didn't just acquire the Cloudant technology, it acquired the Cloudant mindset, the Cloudant development processes. So all of our documentation is written in Markdown. The majority of the documentation is stored within GitHub, and by GitHub I really mean GitHub. I don't mean github.ibm.com, the enterprise internal deployment. I mean github.com, it is public. Anybody and everybody can contribute to the Cloudant documentation. We don't get that many contributions, but we do get a few, 10s, 20s per year, something like that. The Cloudant model is a very important one for an enormous organisation like IBM, because when you've got old established processes, they are very, very difficult to change. They are very difficult for people to contribute outside their defined area. So a developer is unlikely to write documentation for an old-style technology. But within the newer environments, they are very likely to do initial contribution and in some cases full-scale contribution of the content, particularly when you're talking about API reference material. Less so when you're talking about user guides, but I'll say more about that in just one moment. We are also starting to see some hybrid variations of projects. There's a project called IBM Graph, which uses a graph-based database. That's an internal IBM project, but being managed using the external style of the processes, so GitHub, Markdown, all of those kinds of things. Now what's interesting is that because we're making use of more of these open technologies, we're able to get a lot more interaction with colleagues around the world who are working on the and also external customers. Instead of thinking in terms of waterfall 1 or 2 year development and deployment, we're now talking in terms of daily or even hourly deployment of new features and updates. It really is a continuous integration, continuous deployment process. And that has some very interesting effects in terms of the content creation process. And what we're finding within IBM is that fewer and fewer technical writers are actually doing writing of the old style. If you were to go back 10 years, probably even more than that, a technical writer role would have been described as a technical writer. About 10 to 5 years ago, something like that, that had migrated from technical writing into information development. Today, if you ask somebody who is a technical writer within IBM what their job title is, they will probably say content designer. And the reason for that is because the nature of the role is fundamentally changing. More and more of the content that we get is from developers, it's from marketing people, it's from salespeople, it's from the customers themselves. And that content is coming in as almost a beta level of draft documentation. So our role as a content designer is less to create the words and more to polish them, refine them, and think about, here's the key message, the user experience. Less and less of what we do is technical writing. It's about thinking about the experience that our customers are going to have. And that means taking into account factors other than writing. So, two interesting omissions, I would say, from the presentations that I've heard here and indeed at other conferences. The first is, where is the mention of accessibility testing? Second, where is the mention of video technology? And if I were to predict the future a little bit, augmented reality technologies. They are coming. I mentioned the IBM.com cloud website. If you look at the top there, you'll see there's a number of links, and one of them is Learning Center. The Learning Center is actually a link primarily to online video tutorial information. Critically important to the user experience, but there's no words involved. Yes, there's a documentation site, and that's my bread and butter job, but that's way, way down towards the end of the page, and rightly so, because the words are simply part of the user experience. Where are we going in the future? I think more of the same, which is to say, emphasis on the user experience, emphasis on designing the flow, emphasis on bringing together these different media types and these different expectations. And one final little observation. When you mention IBM, a lot of people include the word Watson. Watson is the AI system that was well known for winning the Jeopardy competition in the States. Watson is a real technology, it's out there, you can use it right now, it's freely available for a large number of projects. And one of the things that we're doing with it is to apply Watson technology to analyse in real time the support calls that are coming in and the support calls that are being made on the chat line. And we're able to intelligently, using Watson, determine what the subject of the conversation is and refer them to the corresponding information resource. We're not writing Watson rules, we are helping Watson to help the customer, to help the user. And I think the takeaway from this short little presentation is that as technical writers, we are effectively no longer going to be doing much in the way of writing, but what we will be doing is being content choreographers, ringmasters if you like, to help guide people through what we hope is a rich customer experience. Thank you.